We got to connect with an old friend today. Laura Timbrook is back. Laura is the industry expert on helping shift workers to stay healthy. And today we dropped into a productive and educational conversation around how we can help our shift working clients to sleep better. How many of us tell our shift work clients to try their best to get good sleep? Or try to square peg round hole our day walker sleep schedules onto clients who work overnight or swing shifts? We can do better. Laura is here to teach us how. Please welcome Laura Timbrook. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
All right. Welcome back, Laura Timbrook. How are you?
Very good. Thanks so much. It's great to be back here again.
Well, you wrote to us with a suggestion and said, hey, I've got some new stuff to share. Can we chat again? And Erin and I were like, sure, that would be awesome. So to start, just in case people didn't hear the first episode, give us a little, 5-minute background, and then let's talk a little, and then just sort of tease up what you want to talk about today.
Yeah. So I started as a corporate health and wellness coach, and I was doing that for a number of years. And I started going into facilities that dealt with a lot of shift working and rotating shifts. And we started realizing that a lot of what I would do in corporate wellness just didn't correlate to the shift working professional. So I really transformed my practice and really kind of geared it towards that shift working, that 24/7 workforce. And our results have been great. But one of the things that, we still struggle with is, the health and wellness community as a whole, and getting them to kind of understand and grasp the difference of not having that traditional 9-to-5 lifestyle. What does that mean for our health? And really, we're starting to see really within the last 7 years, more studies coming out, and the results aren't good.
No.
So it's really about, we got to recreate what we think is healthy and how we present it to really support their lifestyles, because we're seeing so much on the circadian rhythm disruption that it's blowing it out of the water.
Wow. It seems preposterous that the wellness industry is just clocking this now, no pun intended, but why do you think the wellness industry has dragged its heels on paying attention to this? Are these just because they're the night shift workers and they're working under the cover of dark and we don't notice them?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it comes down to, we don't know what we don't know. So unless you've ever worked a shift, you don't really understand the nuances. And then on top of that, we have a lot of the night shifters just don't think we can help them because we haven't been able to help them. So they stop talking about it. Why focus on something they have zero control over? So I think it's a little bit about both. Is we don't realize it as health and wellness professionals. I know I never did. And then the shift workers are like, I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of telling you I'm tired. And I'm tired of you telling me to go to bed the same time every night.
I know. I feel like such a jerk because I'm teaching a little group program right now. And we just started talking about, the importance of going to bed, and just kind of like you said, here's some tips for going to bed and getting a good night's sleep. And I was teaching this lesson, and this is embarrassing, but I taught this whole lesson. And then I said, okay, so everybody go off and do that. Unless you work night shifts. Okay, bye. That was how I ended the session. I was like, I got nothing. So I apologize. But thankfully you have.
And it's hard, right? It's so hard to understand because there's so many nuances. So I can totally understand. I mean, I used to say all the time, if they're a night shift, just flip the information around I'm giving you. I mean, I didn't know how to react to it because I didn't understand them.
So can we give our audience a feel for just how big of a population this is? Do you have some information at all in terms of the number of people that fit this demographic?
Absolutely. In the US, we have about 20 to 25% of our workforce that are shift workers.
What?
So you're talking about 1 in 4, 1 out of 5 individuals are working some type of shift. Now, this could be a standard evening shift, which would be our typical second shift. Mm-hmm. We have our night shift that most of us are familiar with. But then we have on-call shifts. That's high-end corporate. Then we have swing shifts,
Mhm.
split shifts. That's high in law enforcement, where they'll do 4 hours and then they're off for 8 hours and 4 hours again. So there's so many different types of shifts. But yeah, we're looking about 1 in 4, 1 to 5. And Australia is about 25%. Europe is similar numbers. So, and I think Asia is actually even a little higher. So we're dealing with a large percentage of our workforce that we're just not addressing.
Oh my gosh. That's scary, right? That's
It
scary.
is.
Even if we were able to dramatically like move the needle on people that have a normal sort of circadian rhythm, you still are going to have 20 to 25% of the population that is still really struggling. And just think about the Herculean task it is to try to move the needle on folks that have a normal sort of circadian rhythm schedule.
Yeah. And we see with like cardiovascular issues, 40% more likely to have cardiovascular issues when you're working shifts. 40%. Like, we know in corporate wellness how much of these numbers matter, and we're not even addressing the guys with the highest rates, or ladies.
Do we know why that is? In terms of, is it something biochemical, or is it just I'm tired and I rely on substances to help stay awake that increase I'm just curious if you've got an opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of both, right? Because the biggest thing, when I first started into this, I used to make a joke, and I used to tell the people I was working with, we would focus on nutrition and sleep, and everyone would always be like, well, what's the most important? I was like, well, if you talk to a neurologist, they're going to tell you sleep. If you talk to a dietitian, they're going to tell you diet. If you talk to a health coach, they're going to tell you whatever one you could do first. I've changed my viewpoint on that. It's sleep. All these studies are coming down to circadian rhythm disruption. And it was actually one of the driving forces that created my Better Sleep course for health coaches to better work and support the shift working lifestyle with sleep, because sleep became like the crux of the whole thing. That was your foundation. That's your house of cards.
Erin and I interviewed Dr. Kirk Parsley. It hasn't, it'll come out before this one. He said the same thing, that the more he was working with like these Navy SEALs and people that, that sleep was the underlying thread that was disrupted among all of them. Whereas fascinating.
Yeah. It's wild, because I never would have thought about that. And it's just, and the crazy thing is, it's little tweaks that make the biggest impact. Like, I think so many times we're looking at the extreme end. We have all these to do, and we have to do these things. And, those micro habits, those little tiny changes are really what moves the needle forward. And I've seen so many people improving their sleep based off of the smallest changes.
Cool. Well, we definitely want to get into that, but I just want to start by saying that I love that you went down this rabbit hole. And gosh, the rabbit hole. Has there been a podcast episode in the history of podcasts where somebody didn't evoke the rabbit hole? But here we are, talking about the rabbit hole. But I just think this is really cool, because you uncovered through your own practice a solution that needed to exist. And then you created that solution. And it's so specific. Better sleep for shift workers. I love how specific that is. It was a gap that existed. And through working with people, you realized you needed to create something. So just excited about the very existence of that. So this Better Sleep course is for health coaches or health consumers, or who
it's
gets
for health.
it?
So right now it's for health coaches. So we're doing a health coaches and wellness professionals, anybody to try to, we created Shift HC. And that was, I think last time we were coming on, I talked about that course. And that was just kind of opening the doors to what shift work meant. Where are some of the risks coming from? The Better Sleep course, this is really where we're diving into the specialization. We're really getting the numbers. I mean, there's over 70 studies referenced in this course. And we're going through the science, we're going through the strategies, we're addressing behavioral changes. How can you take the science, the things that work, how do we put that into behavioral changes? And then I added one more part. I was talking to my business coach. I was like, I'm so tired of courses not giving actions. Like, how do I take all this information and apply it into my own practice? So then we took a portion of the course, and we actually give you the lead magnet. We give you 2 already done blog posts, CEO optimized. We give you the content calendar, so you can really take this and put it into the practice, because My goal is to really help health and wellness professionals better support the shift workers because I see how desperate they are. And I don't want someone to think that I work night shifts, therefore I can't be healthy.
Yeah. Wow. And people stuck in that paradigm, and just telling them get a different job is not helpful.
And I think that's one of the hardest parts. And this is where I kind of struggle with getting it across health and wellness professionals, because I think we have this preconceived notion in our brain that the people that work night shift, either they need to work night shift because of money, some of them do, or they aren't educated enough to have a better job. Or, if they're working these jobs and they're having these health issues, it's because of poor diet choices and it's all their own fault. Like, we have this preconceived notion of what shift work looks like. And I did too. And I was so wrong. These people, they're not eating, they're skipping meals. Getting food is hard. A lot of them are eating fast food, but their calorie count isn't even hitting 1,000 calories a day. And they're still gaining weight at astronomical rates. There's so much more. And on top of all that, so many of the people I work with absolutely love their jobs. They call us, those that work 9 to 5, day walkers. And they're like, I could never be a day walker. And they love it. They absolutely love it. So to hear these men and women love their job and just be like, well, I'm going to be unhealthy the rest of my life, that just wasn't an option for me.
Interesting. What's interesting about this too, first of all, I really want to dive into, I definitely want to put a pin in the fact that they're gaining weight because of circadian rhythm disruption, because that is something I geek out on immensely. But I was thinking about a client I have and a friend of mine. One of my clients is a surgeon and works these insane long shifts and on-call shifts. And he's a surgeon and he's not getting very much sleep and he's not able to stop and eat. And it's like, you're a surgeon, like, for the love of good. Like, another friend of mine who works an overnight shift, he makes big bucks fixing airplanes. So like, these are people who I want to be well rested. I want them to be well nourished. It would be great. I think you're right. Sometimes we do think about the 7-Eleven cashier or something like that, which we could be concerned about those folks too. I'm very concerned about everybody who works overnight. But like, some of these jobs are have high cognitive demands and high, what's the word I'm looking for? Dexterity and acuity and things like that. And I wonder how they're doing.
They're not doing well.
They're not doing well.
And, here's the crazy thing. So we know, so if you're awake for more than 24 hours, you have the productivity of someone that has a blood alcohol level of 0.10. Mm-hmm. And these are the guys, like you said, they're running heavy machinery. You couldn't run heavy machinery drunk, but yet we're putting them behind the wheels, behind forklifts, behind construction, operating on people. There was a really interesting study that was done on 11,000 physicians. So they had 2 sets. One slept 7 hours, one slept 6 hours. The ones that only slept 6 hours were making drastically more medical mistakes than the ones with for the 6 hours. So just 1 hour difference made a huge difference in medical mistakes. Then we see it with nurses too. There was 50 nurses done, or 500 nurses. I forget how many nurses, but they went through sleep intervention training, and through that sleep intervention training, they got 50 minutes of extra sleep. And again, drastic drops in medical mistakes and near medical mistakes. So we're not talking a whole lot more sleep. We're talking like 50 minutes, an hour, and it's significant.
Right. Wow. So I would love to kind of compare and contrast what people that have, like, how those people that are working shift work in the past were trying to get sleep. What hacks and advice were they being given that, quite frankly, was wrong? I'm going to guess one of them is some sort of pharmaceutical or sleep aid and what that does, compared to what's sort of in this course and these small kind of micro changes that make all the difference in the world without the negative impact. So let's start with in the past. In the past, how did shift workers cope?
Go to any CDC sleep foundation. The first thing they tell everybody is go to bed the same time every night. That's not if you're a shift worker, you can't even do step 1. So we hear a lot about that. We also hear a lot of go to bed an hour earlier. And this is the one that really kind of is the most jarring to me. Go to bed an hour earlier. 9 to 5ers, we go to bed an hour earlier. We're skipping out on Netflix. Maybe we're not checking our Facebook or email right before bed. The impact is not that bad. When we're talking with somebody that might be a night shifter, we're asking them to go to bed an hour earlier, keep sleeping for an extra hour. That's time with the family. That might be getting kids on the buses. That might be missing dinner with the family. There is such a bigger impact. So again, they're like, yeah, that's not even possible. Like, my family's too important to me. I already feel guilty missing soccer games with my kids or not taking my spouse on date night. And now you're telling me I have to give up more. I'm tired of giving up. But what we can do is we can simply change that paradigm. Instead of telling them to go to bed an hour earlier, let's make getting their sleep easier. Because a lot of times they're going to bed, but they're struggling for the first 2 to 3 hours trying to sleep. So blackout curtains is a really big one. We hear this all the time, blackout curtains. Yeah, blackout curtains only work if they're effective. And what I mean by that is the smallest sliver of light will trigger your circadian rhythm to wake up. We need to be Velcroing these blackout curtains to the wall. They need to be pitch black. And a lot of times it's just, we don't think about it as health and wellness professionals because we don't deal with it. So Laura, like you said, we're prescribing medications. We're doing these. And a lot of the people don't like taking medications because now their sleep inertia in the morning, they're groggy for a long time. So it's just things. And all the tips I have learned have come from shift workers. Just recently I learned there was noise canceling blankets that you can put on the walls and doors, and it cancels out like 60 decibels of noise. So that's significant when you're trying to sleep and someone's running a lawnmower at 10 a.m.
Wow. That's actually cool that you learned a lot of these tips from shift workers. It's sort of like, what a commentary on the modern wellness machine, which is, well, what does the CDC have to say? Those guys don't know. They're not out there working. Come on.
Yeah, because it's hard to know what you don't know. We know what studies can tell us. And now we're starting to see more studies really focusing on shift work because they're starting to realize, okay, these health risks are significant. We're not changing from a 24/7 world. So how can we do better? And I think this is where we're starting to see, some better researching coming out. And we're starting to see through this research, it's all linking down to that circadian rhythm disruption. And if we can support it better, and, telling somebody that they have to change their job or change their career isn't an option. So there's got to be little tricks and tips, and there are. It's just we got to figure them out. And by listening to the old timers that have struggled with this and found things that work, has been kind of wild. And then new tips, binaural beats. That's a huge one that the shift working professionals are using. And that's pretty wild when you get it to work. Some people it doesn't work, right? Just like everything. But the ones it does work for, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, we spoke with a guy who this year who does that stuff. He makes those tracks with the frequencies. Okay, so the conventional wisdom, sort of go to bed the same time every night, go to bed an hour earlier, take these meds. I'm always curious because, to be honest with you, I have a circadian rhythm piece in my health coaching program, but it's around meal timing and how to time your meals for, the best metabolic impact. So now we're getting into, I kind of want to steer the conversation into this sort of weight management issue that comes up when you're staying up late and eating meals at odd hours and off hours. So what do you teach with respect to meal timing?
Yeah. So this was another game changer. And what I'm going to do real fast is if you go to lauratimbrook.com/night shift, one word, you can download, it's one chapter of my book that's coming. It's called Coaching the Night Shift, and it's on sleep. We go over all these little nuances. But, meal timing was huge only because with meal timing, we've had so much gut disruption with shift work. And if we could change the dynamic of when we're eating, it works better. Now, I have seen a lot of people that are been hardcore shift workers that do time restricted eating. They do not eat past 6 p.m. and they recommend that for their shift workers. I find that to be a little extreme because it's just, for a lot of the people I work with, they're not extreme health people. So they're not seeing the value in it. But what we have done is shift our 2 larger meals. Let's say they start work at midnight. We do 2 larger meals before midnight, and around 2, 3, 4, when they start getting that energy crash and they're ready to reach for the caffeine, that's when we give another something small, maybe a yogurt, maybe some nuts, a cheese stick, hard-boiled eggs, something small, something to give them energy. I usually like to kind of pair it with something that's kind of maybe like a fruit juice and nuts, or fruit juice cheese stick, to give them that immediate energy, what they're looking for, the caffeine, and then give them like a protein and a fat for a sustained energy, but not a lot where it's going to affect their sleep because they're trying to digest, a McDonald's hamburger at 2:00 in the morning.
When Erin talks about her circadian meal timing, she talks about those earlier meals or your bigger meals, right, Erin? Like your bigger meals are earlier in the day, and your later meal when you're closer to bedtime is smaller. That makes total sense to me. Did that hit home for you, Erin?
Yeah, it did. The thing that where my cognitive dissonance comes in is that here's my day walker point of view, is that this whole circadian meal timing thing is pertinent to the position of the sun. The sun rises and all those daytime metabolic processes kick in, and you want to be nourishing. And then when the sun is setting, your dinner meal, make that a little smaller because you're getting ready for bed, and we want insulin to go away. So melatonin, it's a day walker paradigm. But
you're not wrong, because what we'll do a lot of times, we're pairing it with light. So a lot of times I'll talk to the guys when they're waking up, or ladies. I say guys is just a general term. They're waking up, and we're using daylight lamps or daylight alarm clocks, things like that. That's going to start triggering our circadian rhythm to tell us it's time to come up. And then on the flip side, during the morning when they're trying to go to bed, we're looking at maybe blue light blockers, or just being mindful of the sun, walking into a dark home, all kinds of other tips we have in there. But it's kind of the same idea. Of course, we're not abiding by the sun, so we kind of have to trick our system. It becomes a little bit more difficult, but it's a little bit easier when we can start managing that daylight. That daylight, like you said, it's real tricky, because I know a lot of people, they get off shift and they're starving.
Yeah. And
if we can keep them in a somewhat darker environment and reduce the blue light, they're not starving.
Love that. Oh, I love that. Because it's like you walk out of the warehouse or whatever, and it's like, right. And you're trying to go to bed. So you have to sort of goose the system and sort of with the light exposure. So the dark, we're from talking to our pal Rudy at Viva Rays. Here's my Viva Rays glasses. It's not only the blue blocking, but it's the dark. So, we have these very dark red lenses. I wonder if it's probably unsafe to drive home with those.
Yeah, you cannot drive with red lenses. You could drive with the amber ones, but not the red ones. Right. But even for that, when we deal with stuff like that, even let's say you don't have lenses, you don't have this ability to really monitor the light, we can then put in like a sleep routine. So we trick our body to say, hey, no, it's time for sleep. Think about what we do with kids with nap time. Like you trick them into you give them the warm shower, maybe a little massage, maybe snuggle them up. We want to do that same thing for adults.
Yeah. I would love a little case study. So I have a friend of mine in my neighborhood. Her husband works a night shift too. So he comes home in the morning. Sometimes he'll take a walk with her, but otherwise during the day, he's in bed, but he's got 3 kids and she runs her business out of her house. So he can't turn the entire house into a tomb, but he probably could the bedroom somehow. So this is where those noise canceling curtains or noise canceling, is it a curtain that you would tack up on your wall?
Yeah, it looks like a moving blanket. It's like a moving blanket meets one of those weighted blankets.
Yeah.
So it looks like a heavier moving blanket.
Yeah. So you could hang those from the walls, and then with those blackout curtains, making sure those are really.
Yeah, there's a ton of tips that we actually go into. We talk about even just insulating your electrical outlets. It's amazing how much noise comes from an electrical outlet through a wall. We go into tips like that. I mean, there's really some wild things these folks have really learned on how to manage it. One guy, and this is actually probably one of the biggest things that, we're learning, is bedrooms are designed to sleep at night. A lot of bedrooms are not designed to sleep during the day. So a lot of these guys, if you have the opportunity or the room, they're moving their sleep quarters outside of the bedroom. Basements are a huge one. If you have a basement, it's naturally dark, it's naturally cool, and it's below grade, so it's quieter. So I have a guy that I work with. He, similar to what you were saying, Laura, he's got 3 young kids. His wife works at home with them. And the biggest problem for him was hearing the giggles outside the bedroom door. Like, he would feel so guilty that, they just want dad, and dad has to sleep, and they don't get to see dad very often. And he actually moved his room to a basement, and his sleep improved within a couple weeks.
What a great hack.
Yeah, it was just, so it's simple things like this. A lot of times I think as health and wellness professionals, we tend to over engineer things. And there's a lot of little hacks that are looking right at us that we just don't utilize. I have some guys that they have big garages and they put their sleep room over the garage. There's so many different tips, but everyone's kind of unique. And I think as health and wellness professionals, if we can understand these nuances, it's a lot easier to help guide them to what might work for them.
Health Coach Radio listeners, have I got a treat for you. To get 72-hour free trial access to Primal Health Coach Institute and a 50% off coupon code to the How to Become a Health Coach virtual summit featuring video interviews with over 30 industry experts, visit primalhealthcoach.com/HCR today. Also, that's just really great coaching. Like, walk me through the various rooms in your house. Which one's the best for sleeping in? And let's figure it out. And let's create a daytime sleep sanctuary or tomb, as the case may be.
Yeah, I had one guy that he was from Texas, and he has one of those like storm shelters. He's like, "You think I could use a storm shelter?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's great!" Like, yeah, you could totally use the storm shelter if it works.
Oh, are you kidding me? When it comes time to, I'm going to tear down this house someday and build a proper house. And I'm going to create a sleep bunker, 100%. I'm going to sleep in there all the time. Just an underground sleep bunker. That's my plan for the architect when it comes time. I always wonder, this is such a granular question, but when people are working overnights, should they come home and go to sleep right away? Or is there, like, if they get home, let's say they get home at 8 a.m. I know everybody's shifts are different, but I always think about the person who comes home and goes to bed when the world is waking up. Is there something, does it matter as far as like, try to stay awake a little bit. And then so you're sleeping, waking up and going to work, kind of like the day walkers do. We sleep, wake up, go to work. Or is it just sort of like situational? Like, what's your life like?
I think it's situational for what I've learned. There's so many, everyone's situation is a little bit different. Some of them have older kids, some of them have younger kids. What I always like to say is, find out where they really need to be. If they can, sometimes they come home and they're not ready to go to sleep. They're amped up. Maybe they're coming off a high stress job. To be able just to turn it off and go to sleep, that's going to be really difficult, and it's probably going to set them up for failure. So it really becomes situational. What's important. If dinner time's important with the family, then yeah, you might need to come home and go right to sleep to get that proper sleep.
I love it. That's health coaching, right? This is the thing. It's like, we can't just say, here's the blanket prescription for shift workers. It's like, tell me about your life, where. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why health coaches really are, in my eyes, the missing link for shift workers to have health, because, we have this amazing ability to be curious and bring out that autonomy. The problem is that we have right now is we don't understand it. So if we can understand it, we can be phenomenal for our shift workers. It's just laying the foundation, essentially.
Yeah.
How much work do you do with employers of shift workers on helping them maybe rethink their shifts in some way, shape, or form so the ones that are the most negative from a health impact? Can things be rethought, or is it just kind of restructuring the environment a little? I mean, how much work do you actually do with the employer versus maybe providing some information for coaches to empower their clients to ask for some additional support from their employer?
So in my perfect world, so I address this from two ends. I address it from the employee end and I address it from the employer end. So when I go into an organization, I'm really trying to get them to, yeah, we could do a sleep course and help your folks get better sleep. But I want to do a leadership training because I want them to understand their impacts on how they lead and how that affects it. I think actually last time I was on the show, I talked about this guy that struggled getting to lunch because he had to remove his his steel-toed boots. It was that environment. I mean, yeah, I can give him all the best tips, but if the environment doesn't change, we're only going to make a small progress. Now, for that one, the environment didn't change. You have some of these, and I get it. There is a large, there's large numbers that are coming from having this workforce work in this scenario like this. So to be able to shift that and, the ROI and where are these numbers coming from, that's a bigger impact. And I think that's going to take time to address. And we start seeing it addressed now that the younger leadership is coming in that are like, yeah, I'm not working this guy to the bone. Where before they would work you to the bone. So I think it's going to take time, but yeah, I mean, my perfect world, I want it to address it in both ends. Most of the time though, you get pushback of, nope, this is how we have to run. This is the most efficient. This is how it works. And they're just not, I think with corporate wellness, it's hard to quantify results. We've tried, but it takes time. Like you can't say, oh, in 6 months, my guys are sleeping like 8 extra hours a week. It takes time. So it's hard to quantify those results, and that's what they want.
So this is where we need to get clinicians involved, where we can actually run tests on. This was the overall sort of health and from a blood work or testing perspective that a population was presenting before an intervention. And then we put people through this corporate wellness program. We make some changes, temporary, like whatever, even if it's in a testing environment, and then an outcome where we can actually show data to the employer on the overall improvement of health markers and the ... savings on your benefit plan and what you're paying as an employer to provide benefits for. I mean, that's what it's going to take. And it's going to take getting clinical, I think, people, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a hospital, but somebody who has that background that has the ability to order these kind of tests and find them.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's, even when we go back to, I'm going to throw this in the chat for you guys, going back on that thing for nurses, and you guys can put it in the show notes. I just want to make sure I'm getting the right one here for you. But yeah, when they did it, 50 extra minutes for those nurses, it was significant. So it's these kind of things that we really need to look at because the data is there. The problem is the data is so small. And we really need to be focusing a little bit more on it because it's just, the data is probably there to support it. We just have to really look at it. And it's also going to be about getting the shift workers on board by saying, hey, we want you to do this because we want to make things better for you. And it's just not smoke and mirrors. Hey, we're going to run this study and we're going to do nothing about it. And that's what I talk about a lot of times when I talk with the leadership. It's like, okay, you want your guys to be eating better. You want them to be sleeping better. What are you going to do to support them? Or are we just checking a box? Because that's how most of them feel.
Yeah. I was wondering if there was an opportunity for the shift workers to advocate for themselves inside the organization, but probably there's a little bit of, the old boys, old persons club in some of these industries where you just show up, you keep your mouth shut, you do the work. Maybe I'm making assumptions or maybe I'm painting that with a very old fashioned brush, but it is the kind of thing where the entire category has to come together and decide that they want to change. That means the employers, the employees, health coaches like us, researchers, clinicians have to want to make a big change here. And that's a big, big barge to try to steer around.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the during the course, I talk about the power of pre-contemplation.
Mhm.
We were always told pre-contemplation stage, they're not ready.
They're not ready.
I find that so wrong for shift workers. They
Oh.
are ready. It's their belief that change isn't possible.
Oh, yeah.
So once they can see that, we can flip the dynamic. And it's funny because I don't see this with corporate wellness. Like when the 9 to 5 typical day walker end, right? I only see this with the shift workers, that this becomes so much more different. So it's really interesting when you start digging down into a lot of this. A lot of it is beliefs, but then we do have, like you said, Erin, the old timers that are like, no, this is tough. This is how this has to work. We're a tough group. And then you just have, they're disheartened.
Yeah.
And that plays a lot. And then there's the politic end of it, right? We have our unions, and everybody has their own. So there's a lot that's in here on why it doesn't happen. And not for nothing, you have a lot of guys that are used to, if me or you heard about a 36-hour shift, what would be the look on our face? Like, oh my God, like, what do you mean a 36-hour shift?
Immediately
Like,
no.
what are you doing? Right. It's common.
What?
Yeah, it is common. And the crazy thing is, the more and more I dig into this, it's just how things work. And I can't tell you, I'm working with a guy right now. In the last month, he's had 3 36-hour shifts.
What industry is he in? Like, where is that the most common?
Electrician.
Oh my gosh. So like corporately employed electricians that basically need to be on call for 36 hours kind of thing?
Transportation. Oh, not on call, in the facility.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's, when when he was bringing this up, I was like, well, what do you mean your boss just asked you? He's like, yeah, and I had to do it. I was like, what do you mean you had to do it? He's like, it's the culture. It's how things work. But we see this the same with healthcare. Healthcare is another big one. I mean, for the longest time, doctors had to train, I think it was 36 hours that they had to stay awake, or some ridiculous long time. And it was because somebody that did train something, they were like addicted to drugs. And it just became part of the curriculum for physicians. And we are seeing this over and over and over again. And the crazy thing is, it's not uncommon. Like, I wish I could say that this is not what these folks deal with, but it is. Our law enforcement deal with it. They just come off a long day, a critical call comes in, they're back on the beat again. And it's just, it's hard.
So this is what your union should be fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
Is different, I mean, you're paying all this dues to your union to represent you, to create a better work environment. They should be advocating for no more 36-hour shifts. That's ridiculous.
Well, but there comes pay with that.
Yeah.
So it becomes this really hard conundrum. Like, yeah, you're awake for 36 hours. It's kind of expected, but you get that paycheck and you see the overtime. That's hard. I mean, I know guys that would be making $100,000 on what they would normally do, and they're pulling 4 times that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of a client I had who was a paramedic, and she was a paramedic in a small community. And she worked 36-hour shifts, but like, I mean, a paramedic is maybe a little bit different because you're kind of at the firehouse and you're eating, watching TV and going for sleep and having your workout. But she, she would have, this is still long. Like, I mean, you're getting calls coming in all the time, but she would literally work 36 hours a week, and then she had the rest of the week off. So even though that 36 hours almost killed her, she's like, but it's my whole work week, and I get my full salary and I only have to work, I'm not. And so she could convince herself that the juice was worth the squeeze in some cases. Right. I think this goes back to what you said, which is the power of free contemplation. I think that's so interesting from this perspective, because they don't believe change is possible. And that's not victim mentality, which sometimes we get people in our care, I do, who say, no, I can never change, I'm stuck. And it's just more of a victim kind of thing. But these guys literally, these people literally do not believe there is another way. And that's just because the way the system's, it's the structural supports, the way the system's been set up. It's like, yeah, this is just how it is.
100%.
Yeah. Like the possibility of changes doesn't even exist. It's not even on the radar.
Yeah.
So that's really cool for health coaches to come in and kind of empower, enlighten these folks.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing with that is the first time I actually ever saw it, I had a guy sit down in front of me and he was not going to make a change. He had high A1C levels, wanted nothing to do about it. We started talking about camping. We both were big campers, and he was telling me he was so excited to take his grandkids camping in the next few years. And I just happened to so, if you don't make a change, what's your health going to look like in 5 years? And he told me his mom had diabetes. She died of complications from heart disease, lost the limb. And he's like, that's probably where I'm going to go. And I was like, so wait a second. You're telling me in 5 years, if you don't make a change, the one thing you want to do is take your grandkids camping, you might be dead. And it was just like that moment. You could literally see the wheels turning, and it smacked him in the face. He's like, yeah, it's kind of dumb. What's one thing I can do? And it was the conversation went so quickly. I was almost taken back. I was like, wait, hold on. What? Like, you're ready now? Like, you were just cursing me out a minute ago.
Well, that's the power of the intrinsic motivator. And people can't sometimes put that together. Or they think their intrinsic motivator is just pie in the sky. That'd be nice one day. And, I was sort of a rough wake up call like that is maybe all it takes. It's the power of it, though. Okay. Yeah, I want that. That's a 10 out of 10 for me. I need that in my life. I want to go camping with my grandkids. What can I do right now?
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing too, is okay, we recognize it instead of being like, oh my God, here's your list of 9 things you have to do. You got to get blackout curtains, night blockers, all this. It was like, no, let's look at one thing. Like and for him, it was about food. So we were joking around. He was putting 1 spinach leaf on his Taylor ham, egg, and cheese that he would get at the grease truck in the morning. And then it was funny because then the grease truck guy started getting in on it. And he's like, so we're going to put 2 leaves of spinach today. And it became like this ongoing joke. And that's how he made the changes. But they were such small changes that really made no impact in his daily life. But it was the mindset change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here was a guy that never ate a vegetable. And we start off with 1 leaf of spinach.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting that you mentioned that anecdote, because I am teaching an advanced coaching course right now and teaching health coaches how to go through the coaching relationship and connect to intrinsic motivators and all this good stuff we're talking about. And one of the students put their hand up in the class and asked this really great question. She said, how on earth are we supposed to change the health of the unwell masses if we're working on these tiny, granular, almost imperceptible process goals? And it's like, that's the only way it works. That's the only way people make big change, is in these tiny moments where we get into the weeds of their world. Okay, you're hitting the grease truck. Do they have spinach leaves?
Yeah, because most of the people that have come in, they've talked about, major dietary changes, keto and, intermittent fasting and all of these things. He was not going to intermittent fast. He liked his bourbon, his cigars, and his red meat. I'm not touching any 3 of those. That's not even on the table. And I think that's how we change the dynamic, is by really having empathy and acceptance. Not saying I'm healthy, you're unhealthy, you need to eat all this, drink your water, take your athletic greens or whatever we're throwing out. But it's like, hey, listen, you know what? 1 spinach leaf.
Yeah. I think, to be fair to health coaches, many of us came to health coaching because we had this big health epiphany, right? And we went down, here it is again, the rabbit hole on whatever it was that worked for us, that changed. And all of a sudden we did all the things. So the difference here is that the individual clients that we're working with might not be having this huge health epiphany to start. They have to start small. I see this happen all the time with a client of mine who's going through this program that I'm coaching using a CGM. And again, he started making changes on his own, just seeing the way, he started out just eating the way he always ate. And then was like, holy crap, when I eat rice, my sugar spikes to 350. What? Then he was immediately messaging me, what else can I eat besides rice? But it's like, he didn't make any change. at all. But when you start with this one change and then you're like, all right, that wasn't so horrible. I added a spinach leaf, barely tasted it. Let's try to add two. All right, maybe spinach doesn't taste so bad. Maybe I'm going to add a whole fistful of spinach, or I'm going to find a place to eat spinach at another meal. And then all of a sudden he develops a taste for spinach. What have I been missing out on in my entire life? What does broccoli taste like? Right. So they're not getting that huge aha. Oh my gosh, this is a game changer. It's a slower awakening. And I do think there's far more people there because you're right. They're starting in this sort of pre-contemplation. They're aware of something, somebody told them something needs to change. They just haven't bought into it yet. So if you can kind of slowly come to that, that makes sense. But I think that's, I don't know, where most health coaches are coming from.
You're absolutely right. And, it's funny because I also often make fun of myself when I was a health coach 10 years ago. I was like, I came from my kids having asthma issues, and I went down the granola crunchy essential oil, like non-toxic cleaners. I was deep into the rabbit hole. My husband, I was having him drive me out to like 3 hours away to buy chickens from a roadside stand that was a biodynamic organic farm. Like I was deep in this. And then I lost my corporate job, and I thought like the world was coming to an end. We were going to die of cancer. Like everyone was going to be sick. It was just, and none of that happened. I was okay buying Purdue turkey or Purdue chickens. And, it really woke me up. I was like, well, wait a second. I lost a huge corporate salary, and we're exactly the same place we are financially now. Like it was a huge wake up call. And I think it was that dynamic shift. But Laura, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of times as health coaches, we're coming from, these areas where we had to make huge changes for our health, and we want to see that for our clients.
Right.
And we push for that, but so many of them just aren't ready for that yet. But going back to that guy with the spinach, he was playing basketball with his grandkids, and he was like, I didn't even realize that could be considered exercise. I was like, yes, that's totally exercise.
Everything counts,
Partial measures. I think the partial measures approach is something that health coaches could warm up to a little more. What's the smallest change you could make? Well, that's the tiny habits model that BJ Fogg popularized in the book, Floss One Tooth, right? But that's sometimes all people are ready for. And honestly, I think if we look back on our own health journeys, like objectively, we probably started with a partial measure as well. We probably didn't do every single thing healthy to get healthy. We probably did one small thing, and we can, that's usually the low-hanging fruit for most people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have a course for health coaches. So let's talk about who are these health coaches that would benefit from taking your course?
Yeah, so basically. So we have the Shift HC course, and this really just kind of gets your feet wet. This is good for any coach that's just trying to understand how they can integrate this into their own practice. Then we have the Better Sleep course, and you don't have to take the one before the other, but the Better Sleep course is really getting down to that nitty gritty. Where are all these strategies coming from? We're tying it in with behavioral changes. We're talking about habit loops and motivational interviewing and all those things that we know work so well, but we're tying it back to those strategies we just previously learned on. So the Better Sleep is really for those coaches that are like, yes, I want to focus on better sleep. Maybe you have a ton of nurses. Maybe you are doing law enforcement. This is really going to give them data to get them to drive forward. And that's really the difference between the two courses. One's just kind of your overview. We're going to give you everything so you can kind of take it. But the Better Sleep, we even go into performance. So if you're going to a corporate facility and they're like, well, what does this mean? Well, we're going to give you how much of an economy impact does this have? So we're going to give you those numbers to kind of jar people a little bit and be like, yeah, no, this matters. Like accidents, if you have, there's something called shift work sleep disorder, basically a form of insomnia that's because of a non-traditional sleep schedule. Mm-hmm. You're 300% more likely to have a traffic accident.
I can think of a lot of coaches that we know who are working, who maybe came out of the healthcare world and want to zero in on nurses, doctors, health practitioners. I know at least a couple who want to focus on law enforcement and paramedics. This is the thing when you're a health coach trying to carve your niche. A lot of times the people you want to help are the people that from the industry that you came from. And if you yourself had an experience with a shift work, swing shift, whatever, any of these shift working paradigms, you can go in and help your brethren and your get better, feel healthier.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, even for, schools and other organizations, health coaching organizations, this is what you really want to be training your students, your employees on, because, a lot of times, you might have linemen in your organization and you're only focused on the corporate wellness, not the person hanging 75 feet above the ground. You want them sleeping.
No doubt.
100%. Wow. So, I mean, I just think every health coach needs to really understand this. I mean, because this is not my niche, but I can think of 6 clients over, at least off the top of my head, that were in some sort of shift, and most of them were healthcare. I had a couple of healthcare, a couple of police officers, a firefighter. So these were just people that, were members of my gym that I was working with in terms of health coaching or joined a group program of mine. And other than helping them try to think through strategies to reproduce the nighttime environment, I had nothing else to give them. I would be giving a class and I would be sharing some hacks or some tips, and inevitably their hand will, what happens if, I can't do that because, yeah.
If you go and download that night shift guide, the lauratimbrook.com/night shift, even if you don't do anything, read through that, because it's going to give you all those little nuances. Like you're saying, someone's like, well, what if? We have it in there. And one of the biggest connections we miss as health coaches is the social connection, because we don't have that issue. We don't have to worry about, can I make it to soccer games and birthday parties or weekends off? We don't have that issue. So that was huge when I started realizing how big that social connection was.
And real quick before we go, not that there's necessarily an answer for that, but is that just that is that a component of what goes into their overall health, is this lack of sense of community, and how to overcome that on something other than social media?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I mean, even going back to that one guy I was telling you about with him and his kids just running around upstairs, like it broke his heart that he couldn't be there with them. And he knew how much time he was missing. And he knew how little time you have when your kids are growing up. And that was huge. I mean, we really had to focus on that, actually, to the point how we ended up working on it. He actually had a conversation with his wife. And when he comes home off shift, she takes the kids out to the park or, maybe out to breakfast or somewhere so that he can get home and go to sleep, because it was that initial phase of trying to go to sleep. The guilt would come in and he just couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much to this. Thanks for reaching out and saying, oh my gosh, I've got so much more. Now I got to go buy another course, Erin.
No, this is an expensive podcast for us, honestly.
Yeah. I think it's things that, like you said, I never realized it, had no idea. And then your eyes opens up to it and you're like, you just can't look away. And it's just, I hear it all the time now. People, what'd you have for breakfast? And it's just like, oh man, how many people are just confused about breakfast, lunch, and dinner that work shifts?
Yeah, no doubt. Which meal is breakfast? Wouldn't even
exactly. Generally, a lot of them have kind of adapted to it, but we go with, small, medium, large meals because it just becomes really, really difficult. You wake up at 6 p.m. Are you eating tacos with the family or are you eating oatmeal? If it becomes between tacos and oatmeal's never going to win out.
No. Love that. Oh man, what a cool niche. Just a niche, a target audience that's right for the picking. And thank you, Laura, for helping teach health coaches what they need to know. Really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on and helping me spread this message and getting that word out there, because it's a cool industry.
So is the course found at your website, lauratimbrook.com? Is that where they find it?
Yep. You can go to lauratimbrook.com. It'll be right up there. It'll say courses and you can jump down. There's a couple free little ones that kind of get you to understand where we're coming from. And then we have the Shift HC, and then now the Better Sleep course.
Love it.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you guys.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.